Good afternoon. My name is Sven Masterson, and I am here with my good friend, coach, colleague, mentor, and special guest, Steve Horseman from Good Guys to Great Men. I've invited Steve here with me today to talk about an article I recently wrote about emotional and physical affairs. In this article, I outlined 10 characteristics I have found in men that have successfully, quote unquote, successfully, navigated through emotional and physical affairs in a way that they would report as successful. Now, we're going to unpack what that means exactly as we talk about these. But I've invited Steve, as both a coach and a man who's experienced infidelity personally, to come and talk with me today about these 10 characteristics in an open dialogue where we're just going to talk about each characteristic and specifically Steve's take on each one of these, so you can hear the unique Steve Horseman perspective on this characteristic. And hang on tight. We don't know what this is going to be like. It could be vigorous. Yeah, Steve knows he's welcome to be completely disagreeable if he likes, although I know his nature is to be kind and loving if he does. And we'd love to hear what you have to say. If you get something out of this conversation, please look in the comments below or in the description below and see where you can connect with myself for a free consultation to talk about your affair experience or other marriage challenge. You'll see also a link where you can connect with Steve. Steve also has an invitation to connect with you for a free one-on-one complimentary session where you can speak to him as well. So without further ado, I just want to welcome Steve. Steve, thanks for joining us. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Before I get into the actual content, maybe you just give us your 30-second bio. Who are you? Where are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
30 seconds. Go. Yeah, I'm Steve Horseman, founder and captain of Good Guys to Great Men. Change yourself, change your relationship. Sven and I have known each other for quite a long time now, and we're in the business of helping men who want more confidence, more clarity, a more sense of groundedness and self-respect so they can guide their relationships to a new place. And when you do that, everything changes. And so I got into this 10 years ago after the end of a 28-year marriage, which was a great marriage. I don't have any complaints, but there was this chronic thing that happened, this thing that happens when people start looking outside the marriage for happiness and connection. And I learned a lot when I finally said, what part do I have to play in this? What can I learn from this? And that was the hardest thing. 10 years later, here we are. And we have companies who do nothing but this all day long, talk about this all day long. And we help change men's lives from one of desperation and darkness to hope and light. And I know that sounds religious, but that's what we do.
Wow. Yeah. If I didn't know you, I would be asking to go talk about 10 things you just said there because you made me highly curious and I know you. So, I mean, I can't imagine what people watching this who don't know you are thinking right now. All right, so Steve, you're familiar with the article I wrote on my blog, and the link will be below in the description for anybody interested. And it's called 10 Characteristics of Men Who Survived a Wife's Emotional or Physical Affair. And I realized there could be dozens of attributes that men have who navigate the affair space. And this is not supposed to be an exhaustive list or an exclusive list. But I did try to put together attributes that I had seen in my practice, and like you, talking to lots of people who have or are experiencing affairs. And I tried to kind of come up with some common things I saw in men who navigated that space in a way that they didn't feel like their guts had been torn out at the end. So I try to put these also in the order that I felt like they made the most sense, and I'm completely open to other interpretations here. And so the first of those 10 characteristics I listed is that each man made a conscious choice to pursue restoration or not. And so I've, in this series, these profiles of affair survivors, which I hate that word survivor, but I haven't been able to figure out a better word yet. But as I invite men like you and men like Garrett in the prior episode, men that are coming soon, I've tried to really include a diverse group of people who had different outcomes. And so having you here today, feel free to tell your story a little bit along the way, but I'm curious, how this number one hits you. What kind of yes ands, yeah buts, questions do you even have? What questions do you think men watching this would have about this idea about making a conscious choice to pursue restoration or not?
I want to take one step above from number one, and that's your title. When I first read the title, and that is how to survive. And you pointed that you weren't sure about the word. Survival is absolutely something a man has to decide I am going to do. Survive doesn't mean I save my marriage. Survive doesn't mean I'm now happily married forever after for the next 50 years. Survival doesn't mean I kicked her to the curb and I kept my self-respect and I went and got a new young wife. That's not survival. Survival starts with understanding that you yourself can grow from this. You yourself are currently okay. You're not eviscerated, you're not gutted, you're not emasculated, you're not offended, but this shit did happen. This has happened, this affair. This happened. And this happens all the time. And I try to tell guys, you're a cliche, brother. This happens every 4 hours on the dot. You're just a cliche, so stop thinking you're so special. Survive means take a breath, close your eyes, and realize I'm not going to die. Now we come down to number one. Now that I know I'm not going to die, now that I know that, what's my next decision, my next best decision? And I think you hit it on the head, because the next best decision can be, I am going to learn from this. I'm going to figure out what happened. When it happened to me, what I started doing is Googling and reading and watching videos and getting coaches and all this stuff. I tried to figure out, I figured out what intimacy was. I studied Esther Perel, who has a great TED Talk video that talks about the cause of infidelity isn't what we think it is. And if we can see it with the right eye, a mature eye, a grounded eye, a secure eye, this is back to knowing you're going to be a survivor, you can make a choice. You can make a choice to learn. And if you make a choice to restore or reinvent, not just survive or save the marriage. Who wants to save a marriage that wasn't working anyway? Who wants that? How about reinvent? How about carve out something new? What if you make a commitment to that first, instead of a commitment to living on pins and needles every single day with the quiet fear of finally kicking her out of your life forever so you can get revenge with a 22-year-old, right? Which is what some advice you get on other websites. We say choose to restore first because it's a choice to move forward, a choice to learn, a choice to grow, and something else we're going to be talking about here, a choice to learn how to empathize and understand something that feels very evil and very dark inside your male body. We all know how horrible it feels to be betrayed. Betrayal can feel like physical pain, but a choice to restore or reinvent is a choice to step out of victimhood, which I know is a segue into number two, right?
Yeah, before you do, the one thing you made me just aware of is, I'm always, because of good instruction I've had, trying to be as concise as I can with titles and subheadings. And so I think a lot of men will read this article and they'll see restoration in my first bullet as being restoration of the marriage. But I actually meant restoration in a much more broader sense, that, whether you save a marriage or not, I firmly believe that that all parties involved, the man especially, and since I'm working with him, is in need of restoration. And so restoration to me can look like a lot of outcomes as far as in the technical, what happens a year from now, but they have some essential needs to still make sure that the man is experiencing a restoration of himself regardless. And how that impacts his relationship is a big question mark, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you alluded to number two. Each man refused to see themselves as a victim. Now let me just add a little caveat here. One thing that these subheadings can't really spell out is how much time took place before a man was able to enter this particular mindset. So feel free to speak to that along the way, what your experience has been. But yeah, how did that hit you? The idea of men deciding not to be victims.
I think that's the right number two, because after you have a first choice of saying, how am I going to learn or grow from this? And it took me a few months in that first part of learning and growing and studying, just in number one. Number two had to come along with that, because you can't decide to learn and grow if you believe that all of this happened to you. if you believe that there was a manipulation going on, a preconceived plan to make you look like crap or feel bad, you can't believe that you're a victim. Now, the opposite of victim, we normally call a creator, somebody who creates his own reality. He just doesn't sit around a victim of circumstance and a victim of reality. There is a time period where you're in so much pain, you can't help but be a victim. It's like when you first get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Say the viewer's been hit by a car. It didn't kill you. You're screaming. You are very much a victim and you're bleeding. But you have to get over it pretty quickly to realize that the old lady didn't see you, right? And the sooner we get out of the victim mode, the more you can start getting what we call wind in the sails and start moving forward. Victims go backwards. They find blame. They dwell in darkness and insecurity and negativity. Any solution you're trying to come up with will never be born well out of those places. So go from victim to creator. And this is a decision not to forgive and forget and all that crap. This is a decision that, no, I'm going to take care of myself now. This is a very selfish decision to not be a victim. I'm going to take care of myself. So we can say that instead of don't be a victim. I'm going to take care of myself.
Yeah, I find, I don't know about you, but I find that is one of the more gratifying parts of this work, is helping a man kind of in that dance where he's still in, he just got hit by the bus, he's still feeling the pain, and just being able to provide just the right amount of empathy and compassion and care, but also helping him to move out of that as fast as possible. I also find this one of the most challenging parts of what we do is not being the person who watches the bus hit the guy, and then while he's on the ground and he hasn't even realized he's been hit by the bus, walk up and say, you can't be a victim, right? Like, that's really easy to do, right? Because when you're so eager for a man to experience what he will be able to experience, it's hard to, for me, it can be hard to remember that he's still in pain, right? So we have to like figure that out, and that's been a delicate dance for me to learn, but it's one I really enjoy. The number 3 point was that each man found a willingness to address his shame, fear, anxiety, and insecurity. Now I realize there's a lot more that men need to address, but these are what I call in my practice the 4 pillars of suffering, which seem to account for almost everything that's causing a man misery.
Yeah.
Tell me about your experience with this or similar things that a man needs to address in himself.
Those 4 emotions come usually in response to words you hear from her. And I'll share some of those responses, some of those words I heard. And I bet the listener here is going to go, oh, bingo, bingo, bingo. Because like I said, we're all cliches. Here they are. I love you. I just don't feel in love with you anymore. We never actually had a great connection. I don't feel sexually attracted to you. I see you more like a roommate. You're so controlling. I've never been able to have my own voice. I've never been able to be me because you control me and everything else. I think you're narcissistic. I think you're really self-righteous and selfish, right? You've always been manipulative, and you've always emotionally abused me in ways you don't know. I'll stop there, right? Boom, boom, bingo, bingo, bingo. Because all of those create shame and blame and insecurity and anxiety, because we hear those and we start thinking, is she right? Is that true? Am I a monster? And then with all those words, when we talk to a guy, we help him with, what does she mean when she says all those things? Which ones of those may be right? Where might she have a point? And then face the fact that, no, you haven't been perfect either. You do have a role in the health of the relationship. You didn't make her cheat. You didn't make her do that, the affair or whatever. You didn't make her. Yes, she has choices. But the health of the environment is very much part of our energy. And we have to own, without shame or blame or insecurity, we have to own the part that we did. And this is step 3 here, is where we help guys do that.
So if you're willing to go a little deep and delicate about something in this area. I'm curious how many men you've talked to in this exact spot, when they're getting gaslit, have told you that their wife, sometimes a long-term partner who they were intimate with for a long time, then turns around and says, "You raped me." I've talked to a number of men, and I know men that are getting gaslit and men that are experiencing oftentimes in tandem with a woman who's calling them a controlling narcissist, have also been told this story. And it's different. And that's why I said it's delicate, because the wife they've had for decades is now suddenly standing before them, accusing them of being a rapist. So I'm curious if you're seeing that. And
Yes, I have seen that. I've seen it. Sometimes it's generational. The words change. The older women, 50s and 60s, speak of emotional abuse and coercion and being controlling. They don't use the word rape because it's not as common in the older generation that you would call that rape. As the Me Too movement and everything else has come out, non-consensual touching and sex, even in a marriage, has been more called rape or involuntary sexual participation. And so, yeah, we hear it. Now, the truth is, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing, whether it's hugging, kissing. I read an article this morning about a woman who demanded her husband not touch her pregnant stomach to bond with the baby the way he wants, unless she gives him permission to touch her stomach. And he is like incensed that he can't touch her stomach anytime he wants. Now she will maybe in years say, you used to almost rape me when I was pregnant. And I would agree with the people who say that she should be able to ask him to be considerate and ask permission, right? He just, anytime he wants in public, reach around and grab her. And so what she's experiencing is a total lack of autonomy and protection over her own body. This experience is really common, no matter whether it's kissing, hugging, sex, foreplay, a woman can feel it. Now, is it true? If it's true for her, it's true. If it happened to her when she was 8 years old, it'll be true for the rest of her life. Anytime unwanted touching happens, it's rape.
so what empathetic point of view would you give the man hearing this, realizing it's not our way or experience that trying to change a woman's mind is really an effective strategy for life? So realizing the only man that we can really help in that situation is the man being accused of that. What empathy, what nugget would you give him to help him stomach that experience a little bit easier?
Yeah. We always say it's not about you. The one thing us guys do is we internalize everything as a personal reflection of our own worthiness, of our own desirability, our own sexual value. And we think that she holds the mirror up for that. And if she rejects us or calls us a name, all of a sudden the fight's on because she just dishonored me or disrespected me. It's not all about you. The empathy is that when you get those responses, she is doing this for herself to protect her own feelings of intrusion. It's not against you. And part of this is a self-centered worldview men have. They think everything is about them. Every word, every rejection, right? We do. And so we have to teach the younger guys that every time you feel like you've been slighted or disrespected or rejected, sometimes it's because you're unable to see that they are taking care of themselves. It's not personal.
Right. Yeah. And in my approach with men, I find that and encourage men that when they are experiencing this level of shame and rejection, um, feelings of abandonment, feelings of, well, all these unpleasant things, they're really experiencing really their own view of self. It's not necessarily a conscious view of self, but it's not her. It's just their interpretation that this means that. I find that part of that healing process for men with getting through these ideas is to understand kind of what stories they've held on to their whole lives about themselves. All right, so number 4 is each man developed unconditional positive regard for self. Talk to us about
I thought that we just had a very good segue to that. Because when we're feeling shame and blame and anxiety, especially at the words of a woman rejecting us, we tend to hold ourselves in very low regard. We may believe that we're an evil monster. There's a difference between being uninformed, ignorant, sometimes inappropriate. As a young man, we do this all the time. That's how we learn. Doesn't mean we're broken. Doesn't mean we're bad. Now, a woman who's attacking us may try to make us feel like we're diseased or somehow broken, but we're not. And so number 4 is important for me because you have to know that although you made mistakes, it doesn't mean you are a mistake. The difference between guilt and shame. Having a little guilt and regret is healthy for a man, a healthy man. Having shame, the idea that I am a broken person versus just having made a mistake, which is a guilt response, is really important. So you have to hold yourself up higher and know that I'm capable of handling this. I don't need to overreact. And by having a high opinion of yourself, it means you also have a high expectations for your response, where you don't go overboard with anger and blame and retaliation and getting into fights about this. If you have a high opinion of yourself, you find out that fighting about stuff is kind of a waste of time. It's a misuse of your own value.
Right. Yeah. And a hard place to come to in an emotional moment.
Yeah.
It's the hardest time. This is why I feel like it's really essential that a man take a break from trying to fix the relationship for a little while and just spend some time kind of practicing this regard and getting reacquainted with his own value and worth and significance outside of the marriage struggle, because to be exposed constantly to the emotions and the especially if he's getting gaslit, right? All of that is a tremendous pressure cooker environment, and it's the last place you want to try to build unconditional
Yeah.
positive regard for yourself in the heat of the moment. All right, so springing from that, the next thing that I found that men really need to do, and this is an area that I get a lot of colorful comments in response, and I'm sure you'll understand why, is that each man pursued unconditional positive regard to her. So I'd love to hear some of your yeah buts. What's the guy watching right now thinking in as far as a yeah but to that statement, that he has to have unconditional positive regard for her, the
Yeah.
cheater, the woman
Yeah.
that is doing this horrible thing? What are these guys talking about?
Yeah, but that was a choice she could have made. Yeah, but I didn't make her do anything. Yeah, but she has her word. She could have told me what was going on. Yeah, but I'm not the one who cheated. And she's the one who has to apologize. She needs to make all the amends. Yeah, all those yeah buts. And we're not saying those are wrong. Yeah, she does have words. She has responsibility. She has accountability. She did make a choice. We're not saying any of that. All we're saying is that if you go forward with negative regard, that she is a lying, cheating, wasted time, piece of crap woman, and they're all like this, and they're hypergamous. If you start down the dark road of blaming her for being a broken human being, just like all women are, right? This is how it goes sometimes. That's low regard. We
Right.
guarantee you everything will go to shit in your marriage. If you're back to number one and you want to go toward growth and learning, you can't do it from low regard. You have to understand that people make bad choices. High regard in this case is that it's not personal. There's something else going on. High regard is she's not doing this to me. She did it for herself. Sometimes I ask guys to picture an 8-year-old girl who's been pinched by her uncle and squeezed by a stranger in a supermarket, who's been being looked at and leered at and pushed around and molested most of her life, and she's all crying, her hair is dirty and her shoes are untied. And when I show this picture to guys on the internet, they normally get weepy because they remember that they too were 8 years old. And if they can picture this woman who they've painted in this dark corner, their wife, as this, they can develop a little bit of empathy and higher regard for who she is.
Yeah,
There's so
I
much more to
find
say here, but go ahead.
no, there isn't. And although I would say a lot of these things are complementary, for me as a man, but also, a man helping other men in this environment, I find that high regard is an anecdote to, or an antidote to blame, and that it keeps a man's heart soft, which actually positions him well to not feel like a victim. And so I find that men who, you know, stay victimized will generally be always the same man that is having a hard time seeing her with high regard. And if we dig deeper, is the man that doesn't see himself with high regard. So these kind of all travel together and in tandem with each other.
Mhm.
Number six, and it's based on this position of high regard, is that each man cultivated compassion, understanding, and empathy for her and what led to her affair. You kind of alluded to some of this in imagining the 8-year-old version of the cheating partner. But do you have
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about that?
Well, in using my own experience here in this case, 10 years after my marriage ended, and there was infidelity involved, I had to deal with, how am I going to live with this knowledge that I was betrayed, or she lied, or she was secretly talking to other people? How do you deal with that? You can go into the darkness and every morning wake up with a scowl in your face and a knot in your stomach, or you can say, again, that happened, it wasn't about me. And also recognize there was an environment in my marriage that made that almost critical for her to do. Not that I caused it. I'm not saying it's my fault, but I was I was a second party in the creation of the whole dynamic, to where the loss of connection, the loss of trust, the loss of attraction, the loss of respect, all of those things I was part of creating. Is that a reason for anybody to cheat? Who knows? But it certainly creates a ripe environment for it. And I had to own it. So the more I owned that, and the more I started to see that, no, things do happen for a reason, I stopped hating her for it. And once you get past the hate portion of the shock of this is where rebuilding is possible. You can't do it in the dark. That's all we do with guys, is bring them above board, bring them into the light, and stop the hate and the anger and the resentment, so they can finally make a
Right.
good decision. If you're
Right.
gonna stay married. I didn't, but I still wanted to be a guy who could wake up with a smile every morning and not hold this person in high level of disregard and resentment and anger. That would be no way to live my life, right? It's a poison pill you take.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I think a lot of men in a fair context think that men like us talking about, not holding on to anger and bitterness and resentment, that we're saying that the reason to do that is for her sake, right? But it's not. It's really about the man. It's about, how do you want to live the rest of your life? Because a man that holds on to anger and bitterness and resentment and contempt, his marriage can be over for decades and he's still living there, and he still wakes up sore every day, and he still wakes up with pain, and he still wakes up with this record on repeat every day from yesterday. And it's a record in which he's living the whys, why me? Why'd I do that? And blame, blame, blame. And that's really the restoration process we're interested in, is helping a man move past that and back into his absolute best, regardless of what happens. And that kind of does, sort of segue into number 7, which is that each man became emotionally safe for self and for her. Now, I'm assuming that we don't necessarily have people watching this that will know what emotional safety is. And I think that's a term talked about a lot today. And so maybe if you could give us the Steve Horseman definition of emotional safety, and then talk about how a man needs to become that in himself, and what that does in the relationship he has towards her, even if that's a failing relationship.
Sometimes it helps to talk about the opposite before you talk about what it is. The opposite of emotional safety is a feeling. It's a feeling of untrustability, unpredictability. You're walking on eggshells. You have a feeling that somebody will use your vulnerability against you. So you armor up. You don't disclose feelings. You don't discuss fears or dreams for fear that will be held against you. Emotional safety, the opposite of all those things I just said, is a place where you feel safe to be seen and heard and understood and valued. You can connect at a level that's vulnerable without being made to feel crazy or stupid. Emotional safety feels, when the man is providing it, it's like a lighthouse. It has a grounding to it. When men are emotionally safe for themselves, they have a center. They're not spiking high with anger and hummingbird weirdness and interrogation and fear. They're not going into deep, dark depression and sadness and broodiness that we do. We find our center, that we're okay. Emotional safety for yourself, I think, is knowing that you have the capacity to find your center no matter what's going on. What that does for her is allow her to feel safer in her responses to you. Now, if you've been married for 20 years and that you've just had an affair, or she just had an affair, it's hard to build emotional safety. In my case, I had to admit that I was very demanding, very controlling. I had this thing I called intellectual warfare. She was not safe with me. If she said one word wrong or made one illogical statement, I would jump on that and dissect it and make her feel stupid. Yes, I did that. I was a monster. At least now I know. Now, the opposite of that is somebody who knows when to shut up. Listen. Stop trying to win an argument. Stop trying to be right. Stop doing the Perry Mason act and just listen. Now, this at this stage, and we're at number 7 now, this may be 8 months, maybe 4, 6, 8 months into the process, and she's still not sure she trusts you because even though you've stopped all that controlling, really domineering, interrogating behavior, she's not sure she can believe you because, she's got 20 years of it already under her belt. This
Yeah,
is
and
the hard part. Yeah.
this is an area a lot of men, just to throw in, can get really hurt and actually kind of have a regression in emotional safety, because that man is saying, well, she's the one that's cheated, how come I'm actually the one that has to become safe, right? And because
Mhm.
in his mind, her lack of trust in him after she is the cheater is just a grave injustice. And so men can't understand why they need to be,
Mhm.
emotionally safe. Now, for the guys watching this that maybe didn't have an affair, I'll add my own 2 cents here. Uh, like you, I think I was pretty exceptional at intellectual warfare and arguing. And my wife would quickly say that she couldn't ever win an argument. She was just no match. And then match with that, she really couldn't express what she truly felt, because I spent a significant amount of energy and time trying to tell her why what she was feeling was incorrect and being upset by what she was feeling. And what I eventually learned was that was a lack of emotional safety, meaning I was setting my emotional temperature by whatever hers was. And it was really important then for me to feel okay that hers matched mine. And that, come to find out is why she and women like her think that we're controlling and that we're narcissists, because in her opinion, I needed her to think like me, right? And that was not emotionally safe position for her.
It was so well said, man. So well said.
So number 8 is that each man gained clarity about 5 things. And I'm not tied to 5 here, but these are 5 that I just kind of saw a common pattern. And that is who they are, what they want, where they're going, what they're creating, and who can join them. And tell us about the kind of clarity that you see that men must come to or have come to if they were to get through this season of life in a profitable way.
In this one, this is another light switch moment or an epiphany where man, he stops being pushed by the pain of his old way of being, the old marriage, including the affair, the emotional affair, the physical affair. And this pushing, we call it, is this painful feeling like, again, this victimized feeling like, I don't know where this is going to go. And you're getting pushed from every angle and you keep trying to regroup every morning and you're a chameleon, you keep changing, trying to react to things to help it make her like you again. And at this point, when the light switch comes on, he goes from being pushed through this process, he starts to see a future. Now, with this work, we've done a lot of work up to this point with this guy for coaching, and he now knows that he hasn't taken responsibility for what he values, what he believes in, who he sees himself to be, what he wants most out of this life before he dies, where he wants to go, what he wants to create, and what kind of people are going to join him. He doesn't know any of that. And here he is, 40, 50 years old, and nobody's ever asked him these questions. This is where all of a sudden he starts getting pulled through a hopefulness. He sees some light over the horizon that says, no, you're going to be fine. As long as you stay in the driver's seat and you start deciding you're going to be the way you want to be, think the way you want to think, you won't feel like a victim of this. So this is important because it again moves him out of victim mode into creator mode. Now, if he does reinvent his marriage, I always say she's only gonna want to reinvent the marriage with a man who knows who he is and where he's going. She's certainly not gonna want to reinvent a marriage with the old version of you. So when we start using phrases like this is Doug 2.0, what we're talking about is this new version, this number 8 version I think we're on. If you stand a chance at being happy with or without her, you have to do this part. And the only way she's going to want to join you in this part is to see you get clear, calm, confident, and consistent.
Right. And I think it's fair to say, although with the caveat that I don't believe a man is to blame for his wife's infidelity, but we do have a role to play in it. There is responsibility that we have. And in my speaking with men and women, it's oftentimes the lack of this clarity in the first place that contributes in some way towards the conditions for an affair. And so it's interesting to think about this catch-22 that, like you mentioned, whether there's a relationship 2.0 or not. A man does have a relationship 2.0 with himself, and these 5 things, I think, serve every man, regardless of what his romantic relationship status will end up being. Number 9, each man established and maintained clear boundaries for self. And this is probably worth getting the Steve Horseman Reader's Digest definition of boundaries, because this is an area, we hear a lot of dodgy definitions for in our circles. So tell us a little bit what you understand to be a clear boundary for self, and then anything else you have to say about this.
Well, clear boundary for self, the word boundary, you and I have talked about before. Most boundaries that people come up with are rules they impose on other people. Other people must like me. They must respect me. They must be considerate. They must be loyal. They must be honest, and they must always operate with fidelity, right? That's my rules for people to keep me happy. Those are not boundaries. Those are impositions you're putting on people. The only boundary you can have is how you respond to the behaviors of other people. And you have boundaries for yourself. If you expect yourself to respond in a way that is masculine, that is mature, that takes care of yourself, that exudes self-respect, then you do that. You could not control her talking to another man. You could not control those sexy text messages. How you respond to those is what you do control. And so the boundary for you is, am I going to punch a hole in the wall? Am I going to physically threaten her? Am I going to go beat up this guy? Those are your own boundaries. You get to figure out what boundaries you're going to perform in, what you expect of yourself, even when this is happening. Now, when we talk about who's going to join us in our life, you still can't say she must respect me and love me and all this stuff. You can say, I will share my life with people who want to share my values of honesty and integrity and loyalty and vulnerability, whatever those are. If this is going to survive, if you're going to survive an emotional affair and reinvent the marriage, there will be a reinvention of values that you both need to start sharing. Part of the problem of getting there is that there were no shared values, at least voiced. And so at this point, we want to teach guys, what are your values for yourself, and what are you looking for to build as you move forward with her?
I love the idea of shared values. I think that's a really healthy way to look at boundaries. One of the exercises I have men do in trying to come up with boundaries is to write them in such a way that there's no actor in any boundary that's not self, which is actually a really challenging thing to do, because we constantly find where we want other people to be, the one responsible for what we want, need, or desire. But what's really great is if a man can establish a boundary where the only actor in that boundary is him, then he can compare, wow, I have this boundary that looks like X, and she has a boundary that looks like X. And to me, then that's a shared boundary. Our boundaries are compatible, but we're independently responsible for showing up in our boundaries. And in my relationship, that's been a healthy way to be, where we don't demand anything from each other. We don't expect some sort of loyalty or obedience. We simply walk around with, well, this is how I will live myself. I'm glad you live the same way. And if ever that's different, well, I have something I have to do in response. And that's been really freeing as a way to relate to people, and not just in marriage, actually everywhere. Number 10, and the last one, each man reached readiness and willingness to end the relationship, which might seem scary for the man who doesn't want his relationship to end. And he's thinking, oh, I was hoping they weren't going to talk about this one. I don't want to end my relationship. We have a lot of people, probably about 25%, I think, of the people who will watch this might be from maybe a religious perspective of some kind, where when they said I do, it was till death do us part, and they're really struggling with this idea of the readiness and willingness to end the relationship. So maybe if you could speak to this concept in general, with even realizing that a quarter of them have this stress and anxiety that they'll have to change their value system here.
Yeah. And I'll point out that in Catholicism, the other reason you could get divorced is infidelity. It's not specifically defined, but is sexting infidelity? Is having an emotional affair infidelity? What about lusting in your heart, like Jimmy Carter used to say? So yeah, there's a real bind here. We say this number 10, and I love this because it's a shocker. You get through 1 through 9, and then number 10 slaps you in the face. I'm like, why did they put that in there? And it's because it's like Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations, which is he has to know what he is willing to work with and what he is not. He has to know the boundaries here. And well, I had an example I wanted to share here. It's an example where she says, you know what? I'm not sure I agree with this whole thing of monogamy. I think I want an open marriage. I want to be free to date whoever I want, have sex with whoever I want. Of course, you can too. We're just going to raise the kids, and we can be friends, and we can, be together when we want to. And she's painting this whole picture. And we've heard all this stuff before. And a man, at this point, a man will say, do I value that? Is that something I value? Now, sometimes that's a smokescreen. That's not even true. They don't even want that, but they say it for effect. But he has to be willing to say, oh, well, in that case, then you'll be a single mom in about 90 days, because that's not a life I will live. I'm not going to judge you for wanting it. I hear it. It hurts, but that's not me. That means we won't be together. And sometimes a woman will say something less, like, I love you. I'm just not in love with you. We can live the rest of our lives not having sex. I just want to be peaceful and raise our children. Right? This is a different question. She's not going anywhere. She's just never going to have sex again. He goes, I can't do this. Well, usually she doesn't mean that either. But every man has to know what would be the terms under which he would immediately and permanently disengage from this relationship. He has to be willing to know that he would do that. That's self-respect. Now, we have a lot of guys who stay in a marriage, and there's just rampant infidelity, unapologetic infidelity, and she doesn't care if he knows or anything, and he's still confused. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where I stand. Literally, I had a guy find multiple used condoms under the seats of his couch in his home when he was off on business travel. She would entertain men at home, and he would say, I'm really conflicted here. I don't know what to do about this. I see.
What's the relationship? What's the relationship to a man being in that spot and what's happening to him? So I think this is important for men to understand.
What's the relationship with who?
Between a man that doesn't know what to do in that moment and what's happening to him.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it happening to him?
He's in total denial. He's also in total fear of any change. He's in total fear of a story that would include him moving on without his wife or that house. Perhaps he's totally in denial of there being any future that could happen besides the one he had planned. So he makes up excuses for all the things he sees happening. This is why women stay with battering men, by the way. Right? They'll stay in physically abusive relationships forever because they are so afraid of any other story besides this one, even though this one sucks.
Right. And I think there's a nature in the feminine to stay with something until something new comes along to respond to. And I think this is something that if men understood, it can really help here, because a lot of men are afraid to do something new, which is actually kind of a feminine orientation towards a problem. But because she's the same way, she will stay in whatever that behavior is until there is a new boundary, a new thing that says, oh, no, we're not going this way anymore. And this can be really, really frightening for a lot of men, because the man is way out. He's not living in today. He's living 3 years from now, seeing himself as divorced, instead of living 3 hours from now, just letting the gravity of having a boundary about something like that do its work. And what a lot of men find is if they'll actually, get really clear about their willingness to end the relationship today, that they infrequently have to. I mean, they do sometimes, right? But it's the man who is unwilling who tends to lose the relationship, even if he stays technically married. Oftentimes that man is in a permanent state of limbo the rest of his married days. But it's the man who's willing to throw it all away to save it who tends to actually have it in the end. Kind of an interesting perspective.
Yeah. I know we're on the last one to share the last part of my experience. As the listener to this conversation knows, I got divorced right after 28 years of marriage. I got divorced after infidelity. And what happened with me is that at number 8, the clarity question, at number 8, that's where I got so clear about what I believed in, what I wanted, what I wanted to create, where I was going, and who was going to come with me. It became very, very clear that I wanted the divorce, not because of what I said at first. I just can't trust you. I'm going to divorce because I can't trust you anymore. I felt that in my heart, but the real reason I decided to go forward with the divorce is because I found out she was neither willing nor capable of sharing the values that I had created back when I was in step number 8. I realized that what I wanted to be, she didn't like. Who I wanted to be with, she didn't like. Where I wanted to go, the type of life of intimacy and vulnerability, it drove her crazy. It wasn't meant for her. And it's probably part of the key reason that for 28 years, we had a very limited connection around intimacy. Now, I can blame myself for that too. I didn't do much to help it. But by that time, I decided at 50 years old, I would end this relationship with grace, with high regard, with love, and let us both move on to a new phase of life. And it was only because of number 8's clarity I was able to move on to number 10.
Right. I think you mentioned a really important part there, and one that I would certainly affirm, which is with love, that there is a loving way to end a relationship, and oftentimes it is the only thing that can be done, and it's the right thing. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think a lot of men are faced with that decision and bear a lot of guilt and shame, feeling like, oh no, I'm doing the wrong thing. But
Mm.
sometimes it's the most loving thing that you can do, not just for yourself, but for her. And we've talked about this before. I have the belief that some women are like Ginny and Forrest Gump, um, or maybe the Samaritan woman in the Gospels, who, due to their own life story, are just they're on the search for an insatiable level of masculine affirmation and validation that is never going to be satisfied with
Mm.
with you. And I think you could be the most loving partner in the world, but until that woman, confronts that part of herself, it's not going to be very good to be in a relationship. And I know a lot of men this way too. I would say the same thing to a man who finds his value and worth by sexual conquest. Should
Mm.
not be in a monogamous relationship, because it's an unfair and unloving thing to do to the partner. And sometimes that's just how it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, last question before we move on, and that is, these 10 items. What would you say to the man who hasn't experienced infidelity in his marriage? How many of these 10 items do you think would serve any man in any romantic relationship?
Looking at them, starting with number 1, if you apply them to yourself in the concept of self-care or self-love, all of these apply to your own journey as a man. But we talked about in the context of a marriage, but in the context of a man's personal growth, every single one of them applies. Number 5, about high regard for her. You can't be a man in this world who is confident, clear, and effective if you hold women in low regard. If you believe they are an inferior species, for example, you have to get over this new cultural idea, that the red pill idea, that they are somehow flawed. And just like women might use the term toxic masculinity, that most of us are toxic and poisonous, you can't view women like that. So all 10 of them apply to yourself, if you're married or not married, divorced or not divorced, I think.
Right. Yeah. Helpful attributes for the masculine.
Yeah.
Any final remarks before we wrap up?
I just encourage men to dig deep, take care of yourself. If you stayed this long listening to this, you're in this 5% club of men who are intellectually gifted. You're emotionally intelligent. You are a serious person. You love these deeper conversations. If that is you, this community and this conversation is for you. We know it's a small group of men. No, there's millions of us, but it's still about 5%. And if you're here, you found this for a reason. I would say dig deeper and go deeper. You'll never regret it.
All right. And Steve, where can our listeners find out more about you and the work that you do?
You can go to goodguystogreatmen.com. That's a number 2 in between, goodguystogreatmen.com.
All
Everything
right.
is
Well,
there that you'll need.
all right. Well, Steve, thanks again for joining me. Looking forward to more of these together in the future, and appreciate your influence in the men's community, and and in my life. And thanks again, brother.
Thank you, brother. Take care.